muscles. And thankfully, I'm only asking you to learn the ones for the pectoral limb, which is enough, and not all of those as well. But what you'll notice on the list is they're divided into ventral and dorsal muscle groups, and this is very important for generally understanding these muscles. Just like in the shark, we had these ventral muscles that were the, what do we call that movement? Adductor muscles, and these dorsal ones were the abductors. Those two basic muscle masses, the adductor and abductor muscle masses, or ventral and dorsal muscle masses, still exist in tetrapods, but there's just many muscles that make them up, many individual muscles. So if we start with the ventral muscles, which are mostly acting as adductors and flexors. So at the elbow joint and the wrist joint, they're acting as flexors. Those ventral muscles include the pectoralis. I'm going to go back to this guy because I think we can see these on here, and they're a little bigger. The pectoralis is the big main muscle, which actually could be separated a little bit better right there. Here on the chest, so this is the pectoralis muscle here. And that runs from the sternum, the line of the chest, over to the humerus. That's this guy. Okay. And then just in front of pectoralis and underneath it a bit is this muscle here, and this is the supracoracoideus. And it lies right on top of the coracoid cartilage, and supracoracoideus. So there's coracoid cartilage, that's the supracoracoideus muscle. And that's running over to the humerus as well. There's the coracoid cartilage, supracoracoideus muscle. So pectoralis, supracoracoideus are those two main ones there. There's a coracoradialis that is almost impossible to see, so we'll hold off for a moment on that. The two main muscles that you see on the underside of the forelimb itself is this more anterior one, which is called the humero-antebrachialis. So it's running from the humerus to the antebrachium. It's this one here. And what is the antebrachium?
Elbow?
Not the elbow, the forearm. Yep. So the arm, meaning from the shoulder to the elbow, is the brachium. And from the elbow to the wrist is the forearm or antebrachium. So this is the humero-antebrachialis running from the humerus to the forearm. Okay. Really helpful to just think, like, why do these muscles have this name? Because that's going to help a lot. So that's humero-antebrachialis. And then this one here, right behind it, is the coracobrachialis. This is coracobrachialis here. Okay. The coracoradialis is a muscle that lies deep to both of these, and it's really kind of hard to find. But if you look between these two, with any luck, you will see it lying way deep in there, right in there, a little tiny muscle, and that is the coracoradialis. Way in there. Okay. This one is another one that I would feel really bad trying to put a pin in for an exam, but it is there. Okay. See this little guy in there? Yeah, got it. Okay, Allison's got it. Okay. And then the last of these ventral or adductor muscles are the forearm flexors. So if we look on the underside or ventral surface of the forearm, you see all these flexor muscles here. And they're called forearm flexors because they sit in the forearm and they flex the wrist. Okay, so that's all these muscles in here. Like that. Okay. And that's it for the ventral pectoral limb muscles. Okay. Then we get to the dorsal ones. Okay. And there's a latissimus dorsi, which hopefully we have on here. Yes. This guy is nice for being big, even though he's a little torn up. So the latissimus dorsi is literally means the latissimus broad muscle of the back, dorsi. So the broad muscle of the back. And it comes from mammalian anatomy. We'll meet it again in mammals. But it's this muscle here that I'm lifting up that comes off the back and runs down to the humerus. This guy here. Okay. See
So
this?
small.
these guys, you know, they're not exactly the beefiest limbs on a Necturus around. There's another muscle that kind of surprisingly is a dorsal muscle because it's located ventrally. And this is often the case that a muscle morphologically belongs to a dorsal muscle mass, but it's located ventrally, or morphologically belongs to the ventral muscle mass, but is located dorsally. And that just has to do with shifts that have occurred in evolution. And usually you can trace those back. If you go back in the embryo, you can identify dorsal and ventral muscle masses, and you can watch things migrate as these animals develop. So this muscle lies ventrally, but it's morphologically part of the dorsal muscle group, and that's this one here. Anyone know what this is? It's a very distinctive muscle, probably the most obvious one of the entire forelimb of these guys. The procoracohumerales. And do you remember in the skeleton, the appendicular skeleton of the Necturus, there was this prong of cartilage that stuck forward off the pectoral girdle called the procoracoid process? Mm. Yeah. So that's what this is actually attaching to, is that piece of cartilage. And it's running back from there to the humerus, acting to basically pull the limb forward. And I can show you on this one, that got like lumped off. You can actually see the cartilage right there where it got cut, right under the procoracohumeralis. See the little cartilage there? Yep. So it's kind of, this is the beefiest Necturus we got, so there it is. Kind of unfortunate, we got a feather. Unfortunate it got cut. Okay, subcoricoscapularis. So the subcoricoscapularis is a muscle. Why don't I skip that for just a second? Let's look at the triceps first, because that's way more obvious and easy to see. So this big muscle on the back of the arm, the dorsal surface of the arm, or the humerus right here, is the triceps muscle. And the triceps muscle is the main extensor of the elbow joint. And the two, excuse me, I'm about to sneeze. Excuse me. The two muscles we saw down here, particularly the humero antebrachialis, is a flexor, so that it opposes the triceps in action. And so here's the triceps, and it has a couple of different heads or parts to it. We're not worrying about them. We'll learn them in the mammal. But what I wanted to show you is if we spread apart the two heads of the triceps here and look deep here, you can see another little muscle lying in there. Do you see that guy? Okay. You see right in there? Okay. This little one in here. And that would be the subcoricoscapularis. Okay. Then we get to the forearm extensors. So just like there are the forearm flexors that lie on the underside of the forearm that flex the wrist, on the dorsal surface of the forearm there's forearm extensors that extend the wrist. And so that would be this whole group of muscles that we see right here. And then last but not least of all these dorsal or extensor muscles, I'm not quite sure why they're in this order in the book, but that's what they are, so that's how we're doing them, is this muscle that comes from above off the scapula and runs down to the humerus here, and that's the scapular deltoid. So this is another muscle that we'll see in the mammal as well. Coming from the scapula down to the humerus, that's the scapular deltoid. Would be this one here. Okay, very good. All right, and so that's it for the dorsal.